We've always thought the question, what happens when we die, is, well, a solo journey. But what if it's not? What if you could actually glimpse the answer by watching someone else's final moments? We're about to dive into a phenomenon so strange, it suggests the line between life and death might not be a line at all, but maybe a shared space.
Okay, so to really get our heads around this, here's the plan. We're going to start with the familiar near-death experience. Then we'll get into its much, much stranger cousin, the shared death experience. We'll put them side by side, look at the arguments for and against, and then ask, what does all this even mean?
All right, before we jump into the really weird stuff, we gotta start with something you've probably already heard of. It's a phenomenon that's been captivating people for almost half a century, and it all starts with that one big question.
I mean, it's the ultimate question, right? And for the longest time, the closest we thought we could get to an answer was by listening to people who went right up to that edge and somehow came back with stories to tell.
And this is where the near-death experience, or NDE, comes in. Dr. Raymond Moody really brought this into the mainstream with his book, Life After Life, way back in '75. You know the stories, the tunnel of light, feeling this incredible sense of peace, maybe even meeting relatives who've passed on. But here's the key thing to remember about NDEs. They've always been seen as this super personal internal journey.
Okay, and this is where everything gets turned on its head. Just imagine for a second. You're right there at the bedside of someone you love in their final moments. And it's not just that you feel them go, you see it. You're part of it. Suddenly, it's not just their experience anymore, it's yours too. So this idea, this concept of actually sharing in the moment of death, that's what takes us beyond the NDE. We're now entering the territory of something called the shared death experience.
So, years after he told the world about NDEs, Dr. Moody came back with something even wilder in his book Glimpses of Eternity. He called it the shared death experience, or SDE. And get this, it's not about the person who's dying. Nope, it's about a totally healthy person standing by, a spouse, a kid, even a nurse, who says they literally shared the experience of that person's transition.
And what is just so wild about this is how similar the stories are. You've got people from all walks of life, all over the world, describing the exact same things. Seeing a strange mist or a brilliant light fill the room, hearing music that seems to come from absolutely nowhere, or even feeling like they're being lifted out of their own body to go with their loved one for a little bit of the way. Okay, so this brings us right to the heart of the matter, because while these two things sound kind of similar, there's one massive difference that changes, well, pretty much everything.
And this right here is the big problem for our usual way of thinking. See, with an NDE, skeptics can say, well, it's a dying brain, it's not getting enough oxygen, chemicals are going haywire, all that stuff. But the person having a shared death experience, they're perfectly healthy. Their brain is working just fine. So how do you explain that? The usual medical answers they just don't fit.
So, okay, if it's not just a dying brain playing tricks on itself, what in the world could it be? Let's dig into the argument for why some people think SDEs are a really, really big deal.
And this is really Moody's central point. He argues that because the witness is healthy, of sound mind and body, their account is incredibly powerful. It could mean the experience isn't just something subjective happening inside one person's head, but maybe, just maybe, it's something real, something objective, that's actually happening in the room.
Now, the people who study this say, look, this isn't just wishful thinking. The reports are shockingly consistent, even across different cultures. And here's a kicker. It's not just grieving family members reporting this. You have seasoned hospice nurses, people who see death all the time, describing these same experiences. That kind of throws a wrench in the it's just stress argument. And hey, this isn't even a new idea. Guys like Sir William Barrett were writing about this stuff almost 100 years ago.
But, and this is a huge but, we have to pump the brakes a little. These are extraordinary claims, right? And they run up against some pretty big scientific hurdles. So the case for skepticism, it's not just strong, it's essential.
Look, at the end of the day, all we have right now are stories. Powerful stories, for sure. But they're not controlled scientific data. And critics rightly point out that Dr. Moody himself is pretty open about his own beliefs and even talks about having an SDE with his own mother. So for a lot of scientists, making the jump from these personal accounts to proof of an afterlife, well, that's just a bridge too far.
So where does that leave us? We're kind of stuck, right? We've got these incredible, compelling personal stories on one side, and on the other, a totally fair demand for hard, scientific evidence. So what's next for this whole field?
Well, one thing's for sure.
Moody has definitely gotten people talking, just like he did with NDEs all those years ago. And it raises a really interesting possibility. What if these experiences are happening all the time, but people are just too scared of being called crazy to talk about them? If that's the case, we could be looking at a whole new frontier for understanding what happens when we die.
And you know, it's really important to mention that even the guy who started all this, Dr. Moody, admits we just don't know. He throws out a bunch of ideas and theories, but in the end, he basically says they're all just speculation. He even wonders if we'll ever get a real, definitive answer. And you gotta respect that honesty when you're dealing with a mystery this big.
And that's really the big question we're left chewing on, isn't it? Are these shared death experiences a real key, a genuine clue to understanding consciousness itself? Or are they just another layer to an already profound mystery? For now, the answer feels like it's just a glimpse, right on the edge of what we can see.